Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. Um, Today I wanted to talk about um, Jordan Peterson, um, Ukraine, and religion, essentially. So, the gameplay that you're seeing is the remainder of my run through through Beneviento, I believe is how it's pronounced, in Resident Evil Village. I know that game's been out for a while, but I heard that the first house that you go to with Lady D is the scariest, and so I essentially speed ran to that part as soon as the game came out, and yeah, now I'm going back and trying to experience it fully. So, anyways, I'm going to set a link in the description. This is a video that I am going to respond to. Um, it is a clip from Joe Rogan Experience with Jordan Peterson back on. I'm glad Jordan Peterson went back on because I feel like um, he has been less favored maybe in the public view, but that could also just be the bias of the sources that I'm seeing. But in general, I think it was a good idea for him to go back on there. Um, because I feel like when he goes on there, it's only positive. Yeah, he kind of rants and rambles. I totally can relate to him on that. But I think when people really just hear him talk for a prolonged period of time, as opposed to hearing certain sound clips, that they realize he's just sort of like this, uber nerd, um, older, wiser guy who just really is into helping people. I think he honestly has good intentions and comes in good faith throughout the majority of his interactions. I can't speak to all of them because there were certainly some that were less than, I don't know, less than I would judge of his character. But I understand he went through a lot these past couple years, and so I cut him some slack for that. Well, anyway, in this video, he basically talks about the Bible. He freaking loves the Bible. And I'm surprised he doesn't say, I don't think he says the word in this video clip at all, but he really loves the word narratives. So I'm gonna try to basically interpret what he's saying. So basically, he's saying that the Bible was the first book. Now, that may or may not be factually true, but he admits that before this, there are like scrolls and different text written scripts. Um, Obviously, if you really want to bring it all the way back, I suppose you could say, cave drawings would be the first literary attempt to convey meaning. Um, but okay, well, let's afford him that the Bible is the first book. Um, he basically says that it is for this reason that it is the most fundamental text, um, like by definition, which is I guess true as well. But then he kind of goes on to say because of this, it is the framework that we use when we interface with like modern stories and like modern linguistics. Now, maybe he meant to say, maybe he meant to keep it more into like a literary realm, which I think would be a little stronger argument. Um, but I think he does this a lot, and he talks about this idea a lot, really, even though he says he kind of just recently um, came to understand this like last week. But basically, what he's saying is um, we have a certain set of categorizing that which we do, and it's a very natural process, and a lot of it has to do with building certain narratives and sort of sort of categorizing things in terms of like valor and like honor and pride and stuff like that, and these are all like really huge themes in the Bible, and it is such an old and sacred book, and it, I think, quite literally is the best-selling book of all time. um, so I understand what he's getting at from that viewpoint. Um, but I think it was a poorly delivered idea from his side. Now I could be wrong. It's totally possible, but if you watch the clip, I don't think you're going to immediately step back and think anything that's super cohesive. It was kind of an all over the place point. Um, but yeah, so that's my interpretation of that. Um, to that point, though, I do get what he's saying. Like honestly, because well, I'm sorry, not that specific instance of what he said there, but I do believe in the idea that religion and whether it's honestly Christianity or Islam or whatever religion, um, I think that is so ingrained in us in a way we could actually that we don't have right now. And so, like, essentially, I'm saying when we were a lot less secular society, obviously, we relied a lot more on religion. And with that, religion, gave rise to certain traditions and clear practices and a lot of community. I feel like it really surrounded people around a common idea. I think that's super important. I think today's political climate, whether it's being inflated by the news and everything that we consume through media, um, whether honestly, I feel like the political landscape isn't nearly as bad as a lot of people would say. I mean, we're still, when I say we, like America, we're like a first world country who is still like doing like pretty well, like relative to you know a lot of standards. We're still doing great. Um, but basically, there is a certain social divide, I feel like, and I feel like religion tends to be a good antidote to that. So that's to say, like, yeah, like going to church on Sunday and seeing, all the same people that you saw last Sunday at that church, or the majority of them, or whatever. You're seeing familiar faces, and you're basically just taking time to like reaffirm, like, oh, this is what I think is good, and this is what I think is good, even if it's sort of just derivative, even if it's like today you're talking about like pride and you just base it off of some passages and you're like, oh, this is bad. It's like, yeah, probably somebody has made that point more or less like 1,000 times before, but just the fact that you're going and you're stating it outwardly, I think that just brings some good grounding to your worldview. Um, because at the end of the day, I think morality, even for, I guess the exception would be like psychopaths, but morality is sort of the basis from which I think people judge everything. Um, and yeah, I think a lot of the traditions that took place through religious practice should still be practiced. I personally had a whole, I want to say, 2 year stint where I was like head over heels, like super I guess what you would describe as a Jesus freak. Um, and granted, I'm calling myself that. Um, but I was so into, um, I'm saying religion now. What I would have said back then was God, as I was like this non-traditional Christian who was just super crazy about reading the Bible, and I had, like a life group, which is basically like, communal group through the other students in my school. Um, and I would, lead them with a passage and an interpretation of it. And sometimes we would like worship. There was just so many good things that were like, you know, from this point of view, super good. I think at the time that I was leaving, I didn't want to deal with any of that, but I basically realized I had like a low point, and I realized that like I just can't bring myself to believe in God at this point. And that I mean, you could say it's unfortunate because I'm arguing that religion is good, and I could agree with some of those points, but basically all of the value that I took out of um, receiving religion into my life, that I feel like that didn't go away. Like when I stopped believing, I feel like I still held to certain propensities, uh, like just being nicer to people in general, because when I was religious for, or hopefully it was for the idea of just being good in general, and I think it was, but it was padded on that you were supposed to essentially be an example of God, and if God is love, then you're essentially trying to like love everybody,
Yeah.
and it's like, dude, that is a
Okay, feels
super
right.
like hippie, awesome message. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
this came up
We need to get out of this place.
separately actually from the Jordan Peterson video in a group chat today, but I think a lot of that those family values that the
So
tradition
that's who was behind all
of
this.
practicing religion brought along with it basically make it
It's
a super valuable medium to connect with other people through.